All right, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for our session on the FY25 Creativity Grants for General Operating Support. If I haven't met you before, my name is Laura Weiss. I am a program director here at the Maryland State Arts Council, and I am joined by my co-program director, Emily Sollenberger. Together, we oversee the Creativity Grant Program along with many other programs here at the Maryland State Arts Council. Today, we are specifically talking about the Creativity Grant for General Operating Support. So that is an option that is specifically designed for organizations. So we're going to only be looking at that particular track of the Creativity Grant Program. If you are an independent artist, you are not eligible for general operating support. You are, of course, welcome to listen if you would like, but you would be looking for project-based support, and we'll have different sessions specific about those project tracks later this week. So just wanted to put that out there that we're really looking at the general operating support today. So first, we're going to go through a couple of our grounding slides. If you're not familiar with Google Meet, this is just a reference shot of the various features. Just a few things to point out. Make sure that you are on mute during the session while we are presenting, just so we avoid any kind of background noise or anything like that. You're welcome to be on or off camera, however you are comfortable. There is closed captioning. If you do need that, you can hit the little CC button at the bottom. It is computer generated. There's also, there is a raise hand function that we will have questions and answers at the end. We do ask that you hold on to ask those questions. We probably, hopefully, will touch on your questions throughout. So if you can just hang on till the question and answer portion at the end of the presentation, we would appreciate that. And there is also a chat function that is down kind of towards your lower right-hand corner that looks like a little quotation box. Again, we can utilize that during the question and answer session towards the end of the presentation. We'll also drop some links and other information in there as well. The next couple of slides are what we call our grounding slides. We begin all of our public meetings with these slides. I'm going to read them out loud for accessibility purposes. The first is our land acknowledgement statement, and that is that we acknowledge the lands and waters now known as Maryland are the home of its first peoples, the Accohonic Indian Tribe, Assateague Peoples Tribe, Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, Choctaw Band of Indians, Lenape Tribe, Nanticoke Tribe, Nassau-Wawash Band of Indians, Piscataway Conoy Tribe, Piscataway Indian Nation, Pocomoke Indian Nation, Susquehannock Indians, Youghiogheny River Band of Shawnee, and tribes in the Chesapeake watershed who have seemingly vanished since the coming of colonialism. We acknowledge that this land is now home to other tribal peoples living here in diaspora. We acknowledge the forced removal of many from the lands and waterways that nurtured them as kin. We acknowledge the degradation that continues to be wrought on the land and waters in pursuit of resources. We acknowledge the right of the land and waterways to heal so that they can continue to provide food and medicine for all. We acknowledge that it is our collective obligation to pursue policies and practices that respect the land and waters so that our reciprocal relationship with them can be fully restored. And you can find more information about our land acknowledgement statement and our practices around this on our website, msac.org. The next slide is our equity and justice statement, which is that the arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. The Maryland State Arts Council and its supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organizations and across communities of our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination, regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and/or ability. The vision of the Maryland State Arts Council is to play an essential role ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. And we do that through our mission, which is to advance the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all of the people of Maryland. What's on the slide here are 5 goals that are a part of our current strategic plan, which was adopted in 2019. We're actually right now in the process of developing a new strategic plan. Emily and I were just in a meeting about that about half hour ago. But these are the current goals that we are working towards, which is goal 1, to increase participation. Goal 2, provide intentional support. Goal 3, build capacity. Goal 4, leverage connections. And goal 5, bolster Maryland arts. And sessions like this really hone in on goal number 2, which is that providing an intentional support. Additionally, during any kind of meeting setting, we like to observe what we call our creative meeting actions. So these are ideas just to kind of keep in the back of your mind while we go through today's presentation and conversation. And that is to celebrate being in the space with other creative people, engage with everyone's presence as a gift, acknowledge that together we know a lot, enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry, share your idea and trust that it will be heard. Use I statements. Focus your language on the task at hand. Hold one another accountable with care. Apply yes and I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it. And balance speaking and listening. Just a couple of things to just point out that we offer as a staff of the Maryland State Arts Council. We have a lot of different professional development opportunities. Actually, in the next couple of weeks, we have a lot of webinars like this that are walking through our different applications and different grant programs. You can find all of these sessions and different events. You can sign up for them on our Eventbrite page, which Emily just dropped a link in the chat. Also, just to call out that there are other events that we participate in, including the upcoming Maryland Arts Summit, which is hosted by Maryland Citizens for the Arts, MCA. We'll be there hosting regional office hours and also a live coffee with the council. That happens next Thursday and Friday. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out that information about the Maryland Arts Summit on Maryland Citizens for the Arts website. And the last little advertisement that we have here is just looking at ways to get involved with the Maryland State Arts Council. A really great way to get involved is serving on a panel. We're often looking for panelists to serve on the different program panels. We recently had the calls for panelists for all of our monthly programs, including the Creativity Grant Program. I don't know if there's any that are currently up. I think there might possibly be, but we'll have others that will be rolling out throughout the summer and fall for later in the next fiscal year. So if that's of interest to you to serve on a panel, you would be reviewing applications, scoring applications, working with us to go through that process. We certainly would encourage you to check out that opportunity. And again, you can go to the Ways to Get Involved page on our website. All right, so today we are here to talk about the Creativity Grant Program. We're really excited to launch that for FY25. So today we're going to start with a review of the Creativity Grant Program and its guidelines. We're going to really walk through the Creativity Grant application, again, specifically looking at the general operating support track. So we're going to talk about those different tracks a little bit, but we're really going to be honing in on the general operating support option. We're going to walk through some helpful hints for the applications. We'll talk about the schedule, the monthly review process that is available for this particular program. And we'll also just briefly go over Smart Simple, which is our grants platform. And hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions throughout our presentation, but if you have any questions, then we will definitely hold some space at the end for a Q&A. All right, and with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Emily to talk about the Creativity Grant overview.
Great. Thanks, Laura, and good afternoon, everybody. We've got a great group here today. Before we jump into this, I know there was some folks that just joined us. I just want to reiterate that this meeting is being recorded, and we will post the recording on our website on the program page, so you'll have access to this session throughout the year, and we'll also post the slides along with other resources like our guidelines and things we'll go through today in more specific detail. So don't feel like you've got to write down 100 different notes. This will be a resource for you, and Laura and I are here to help you along the way once you move through the process for an application, if that feels right for you. But the creativity grant in general, here's the purpose that's on the screen here. Really, the creativity grant program was developed about 5-6 years ago to support the activities and general operations for independent artists and organizations. And as Laura mentioned, today we're specifically focusing on general operating support option for the creativity grant program for our organizations across the state. The creativity grant program was designed to strengthen the vitality and sustainability of our artists and small organizations to maintain a very strong and stable arts infrastructure across Maryland, and continues to serve the growing needs of relevant art projects and collaborations that are coming out of our Maryland communities. So generally, for the creativity grant as an overview, it's available to independent artists or organizations. There's tracks that we'll go into more detail about, but the creativity grant can support project-based applications or general operating, which again, that's what we're going to focus on a little bit further today. And the general operating support is for our organizations only. The creativity grant has a brief application, and we'll go into that in more detail a little bit later. Grant applications are accepted on a rolling basis and reviewed monthly throughout the year. So in FY25, the cycle ahead, the application period will start July 1st, so just in a few weeks, and we'll be accepting applications on a rolling basis through April 30th of 2025. So that is the FY25 cycle. You're eligible to receive one creativity grant per fiscal year. So as an organization applying for general operating support, you would just be able to receive one creativity grant for your organization during that fiscal year. And you could come back the next cycle and apply again, but just one per year. A few things that are slightly new for the creativity grant program, if you've been familiar with the structure over the course of about 5 years, but there have been some shifts and changes. Laura and I have been overseeing this program for nearly the entirety of the creativity grant existence. And as we continue to move through the program, different fiscal years, and hearing the needs of our constituents across the state, we're able to make some recommendations to make the program better for you applying. So you'll see there's a new option for creativity funding. So while there's always been a general operating support track and a project track, we're actually breaking apart the project track into two different types of grants: a planning grant, which is the new grant, and an implementation grant, which is still in the same vein of which the creativity grant has existed. Again, we're focusing just on general operating support, but just so you have an idea of what the options are if you're an independent artist or an organization, and you might have your own independent artist practice, just knowing what those options are for you. There's also new funding amounts, which is really exciting. So in the past couple of years, it's been a maximum award of $4,000. Going into FY25, our general operating support, we've increased to up to $5,000. So as an organization applying for that specific track, you can apply for up to $5,000 starting in FY25. With the new planning grant, it will be up to $2,000. The project implementation grant will remain at that $4,000 level. Okay, so that's kind of our general overview. So looking a little bit more specifically into who can apply for general operating support. Again, while independent artists are not eligible for general operating support through the creativity grant, there's another program called the Grants for Organization program that does that job for our artists. So independent artists, you must select the project-specific options for creativity. But for our organizations, you can apply for general operating or project as well. But for general operating, an organization must be one of the following. So a nonprofit organization that has your 501c3 designated status, and must be incorporated in the state of Maryland or have a significant presence in Maryland as well. We do at the State Arts Council accept fiscal sponsorships, specifically a Model A fiscal sponsor. So that is a really comprehensive partnership with another 501c3. So if you're in a fiscal sponsorship, you probably already know what model you're in and have a contract with somebody. If you don't have a fiscal sponsorship and you're confused about what that is, it's probably not necessary that you need to know that information. But if you're questioning that, please feel free to reach out to Laura and myself, and we can certainly go into more details. But a Model A fiscal sponsorship is for a collaborative group to take on that particular organization's 501c3 status. You can be a unit of government, so a town, city, state, or a county agency with the capacity to undertake an arts program, a college or a university, or a public or private school serving K through 12 with public programming. Additional note here to think about that organizations with allowable income of $50,000 or less, or organizations with allowable income of more than $50,000 that have not received State Arts Council general operating funding programs in the fiscal year can apply for general operating support. So that just means if you've got contributed income and earned income sources that are at that $50,000 level, you can receive general operating support. If you're an organization that's here today and you're receiving funding, say through our Grants for Organization program, or GFO, we call it for short, you would not be eligible for creativity grant funding. So the State Arts Council has a couple different tracks of supporting organizations through general operating support. The creativity grant is really intended to support our smaller organizations or those who do not have general operating support already. Okay. A couple other things to note as well is that it was mentioned earlier, but only one application per project or program will be considered for funding. Again, and that's in alignment with supporting, one application or funding one application per fiscal year. With general operating support, since we're looking specifically at an organization and your general operations, this probably wouldn't come into play for you where you'd have multiple people applying for different project support, but really we're thinking about your general operations as an organization. Your organization must produce or present arts programming, services or projects that are relevant to the community and available to the public. Your organization must have operated as an arts organization or significant arts programming for one full fiscal year to be able to submit a financial statement that goes along with your application. So really, we just want to see that you're operating for a year and you can produce a financial statement that reflects that year. And if your organization is new within the fiscal year, say you just got your 501c3 status, or maybe you just came together and haven't had a full year of programming, you can apply for project-based support, and that might be a better option for you for your first year and kind of getting your feet wet as an organization and in your community, and then come back for general operating support for another year. And in either way, if you're not sure, if you're confused about your eligibility, where you stand as an organization, what you should be applying for, reach out to myself or Laura. It's our jobs to help you along the way to make sure you've got a successful application, you're meeting all the criteria, and that we can fully communicate and find the best fit for you as an organization. So a couple of things that the Creativity Grant can support, some expenses that we see pretty regularly are things like artist fees and stipends, consulting fees, marketing and promotional expenses, of course, your artistic materials and supplies, space and venue fees, equipment that's connected to your arts-based activities, so not capital related. For general operating, really this would be most of your day-to-day organizational expenses that support your mission-driven activities. So there's a lot of flexibility with the general operating support. You do not necessarily need to pin this funding to these specific things, but just know that they're allowable expenses to be used for general operating support. And what it cannot support are things like regranting or scholarships. So those activities that might pass the funding through your organization to somebody else, that is not allowable. We really want it to stay within your organization and your activities. Creativity funds cannot support capital improvements or permanent equipment, activities that are closed activities for a specific group and not open to the public, activities that are primarily therapeutic, travel outside the state of Maryland, any type of expenses that might be associated with a for-profit business, and with any state arts council funding, funds cannot be used for political contributions or lobbying activities. And if you're not sure, again, Laura and I are here to help along the way. So just ask us that question if you're uncertain. Additionally, so when you're moving forward to the application process, you'll be asked to choose your track. So as we mentioned earlier, there's project-based support for planning or implementation, which is open to our artists, independent artists, or you as organizations, or you have the option of selecting general operating, which is for our organizations only. So with this, you would want to select general operating if that feels like the best fit for you. And as a reminder, it's a short application. It's just 3 narrative questions. For all of the creativity grant applications and tracks you choose, they're generally the same questions. They're just framed a little bit differently depending on the goals of that particular track. So with general operating support, we want to see kind of an overarching view of your organizations and operations, whereas project-based support, we're kind of looking at that very specific time period, beginning, middle, and end of a project. And then organizations, you must upload a financial statement as noted earlier. And that's not needed for our independent artists. So just some things to think about as you're starting to prepare for an application. And now I think I'm going to hand it over to Laura to go through the actual application.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Emily. So like Emily said, this is a brief application that's intentional. We want it to be hopefully quick for you as an organization to fill out. So I'm going to walk through each of the 3 narrative questions and also the corresponding rubric for an excellent to outstanding response for each. So the first question is to describe the primary arts activities or programming and the geographic area that your organization will serve in the fiscal year. Within your response, include the mission of the organization and address the intended community engagement and impact of the organization's mission and arts activities or programming. And the rubric for an excellent to outstanding response is to include a clear, specific, and thorough explanation of the organization's mission and primary arts activities and programming for the fiscal year, which includes clear and thorough evidence of intended community engagement and impact, including intention, timeliness, and/or inspiration in relation to the defined community's needs. So basically, we're looking at what your organization does. That's the primary part here. And we do have a couple of helpful hints to think about when you're addressing that first question. So when you're looking at that general operating support question, you're really remember to describe the organization as a whole. So you're looking at your mission, your programming, all of those details, looking holistically at the organization. So don't forget those kind of basics of the who, what, when, where, and why of your organization. We often like to encourage organizations and artists too, when they're writing their applications, to really approach that narrative as if the reader knows nothing about your organization. So they've never heard of you, they've never been to you, they've never been on your website, nothing like that. So make sure that you're really describing your organization and your mission and your programming. Really give them that full picture of what you're hoping to do. Sometimes we recommend that, a really great exercise can be having a trusted friend or colleague, someone who knows really nothing about your proposal, read a draft application and have them kind of poke holes in it. They might say, okay, I understand that you're a theater, but I don't know, do you do musicals or straight plays? Really making sure that you have those details very clear. That can be a really useful exercise to make sure that you're making a really clear picture before you submit. The next question is focused on the timeline of the organization. So you're asked to describe the timeline of your organization's entire season or fiscal year. Within your response, include a detailed schedule for the year, including specific timing as it relates to steps of planning, promotional efforts, implementation, and execution of events and activities, and evaluation. And the scoring rubric for an excellent to outstanding response includes a clear, specific, and realistic timeline for the entire season or fiscal year, including specific timing as it relates to planning, promotional efforts, implementation, and execution of events and activities, and evaluation. So some helpful hints when thinking about your timeline for your application is, sorry, Emily was responding to something in the chat, is really looking at that full timeline or schedule of the entirety of the activities from the beginning to the end of the season. So really look at your full calendar for your fiscal year. We often recommend breaking that down into some kind of time increment. So that might be breaking activities down by month or week, if that feels right. That might get, depending on the length of things, that might become a little bit too granular. But really making sure that you're walking through an entire timeline and giving specific dates or time frames whenever you can. If you don't know the exact date, then perhaps you're saying, it's going to occur in December, or giving some kind of marker so the panelists understand your thought process and your scheduling and your planning. And make sure that you include all of your steps of your planning, your implementation, your execution, and your evaluation of the project. So again, if we're pretending this is a theater and you're looking at your different shows throughout the year, make sure that you're including all of those different steps of, auditions, when are rehearsals happening, when are the designs due, when are you going to have the first draft of your set design up, all of those different pieces leading up to the actual production, and not jumping from, the audition to opening night without anything in between. So making sure you're really being clear, really being realistic in your timeline and your schedule. The last question here is the financial one. So it's asking, what is the organization's overall budget for this fiscal year? Include a clear list of all projected income and expenses. And an excellent to outstanding response includes clear, detailed, and realistic financial plan for income and expenses tied to the general operations of the organization. So this is really looking at your budget for the year that you are submitting the application for. Couple of helpful hints on this one is, again, you're looking at that entire budget for the year. So, make sure that you are being clear from beginning to end of your fiscal year, or if you run on a calendar year. Include that really clear list that shows specific items for all of your planned income and expenses for the year. Sometimes we do recommend a description of how you get to a total. So if you have, for example, an artist fee that is budgeted at $500, you might include details of how you're getting to that $500. So that's based on an hourly rate of 25 hours for 20 hours, just breaking that down so it's really clear to the panelists so they have an understanding of how you're approaching this. Another helpful hint here is that this response does need to be within the context of the narrative. So you'll see once we get to the Smart Simple part that each part has a narrative block for you to fill out. So for this one, this does need to be within that narrative response. There's not going to be an option to include additional attachments or any other things to for panelists to look at. So make sure that all of that crucial information is included within that narrative box. Additionally, there are a few attachments that you will be asked to add on to the end of the application. That includes a signed W-9 for your organization, and that's so that we have that on file. So if you are awarded a grant, we can process that quickly and get that payment along to you. You're also asked to add an electronic signature at the end of the application, which is just acknowledging that the application is complete and true. And as an organization, as we've said a few times, you are asked to provide a financial statement from your last completed fiscal year. This can just be a simple profit and loss statement. This does not necessarily need to be an audit. This can just be something that your treasurer or financial person is able to provide, usually out of your financial software. If you're using QuickBooks or something to that effect, they're usually able to pull that directly from there. But if you have questions on what's needed, what's eligible, what's not eligible, feel free to reach out to me or to Emily, and we're happy to talk through that with you. The full application and the scoring rubric, it's not currently on msac.org, but it will be very shortly. We're doing these sessions a little bit early this year, so that way we're able to get the information out there. And then as we lead up to the beginning of the fiscal year in July, then you'll start to see these materials populate on the website. So check back on the website in the next couple of weeks, and there will be the full application and the scoring rubric as well, which you'll be able to reference. So just going over just a couple things here. Again, we've said some of these multiple times now, but just to continue to reiterate, we do have the new amount of the grant for general operating support. It now goes up to $5,000. So you are able to ask for up to $5,000 if you are applying for general operating support. Again, you are eligible to receive one creativity grant per fiscal year. It is important to note that creativity grants are what I'll call an all or none grant. And what I mean by that is if you are awarded, you will receive the requested amount. So if you request $5,000 and you are approved for funding, you will get $5,000. We do not offer a percentage or a portion or anything like that. So just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about your request amount. The monthly application review process, this is the same as it has been. We changed this slightly last year, and it's going to continue on for this year. So applications are accepted on a rolling basis. So that means that you can apply literally anytime you want once the application opens on July 1st, all the way through until April 30th of 2025. Applications are reviewed and awarded monthly. So how we go about doing that is we take all of the applications that are received in 1 month are reviewed in the next month. So for example, applications received in the month of August, so August 1st to August 31st, they would be reviewed in the month of September, and then notifications would be sent out by early October. And then that would continue for the next month. So everything received in September is reviewed in October, notifications by early November, and just so on until the spring of 2025. The way that the applications are reviewed is that we utilize a group of panelists, much like we spoke about at the very beginning, that we look for panelists for all of our programs. There is a slight new part to this year. This is really kind of an internal thing, but we would love for you to know about this just so you can know our thinking process. In the past, we have had a group of panelists that have reviewed all of the applications together. So they would be reviewing general operating support and project-based support. This year we're going to separate them. So there will be a dedicated group of panelists who are only reviewing general operating support applications, and then another dedicated group of panelists that are only reviewing project-based support applications. So it's just making a slight differentiation, but something that we think is important to do. It's important to note that we do not score applications. So Emily and I, and no other staff members, we do not score the applications, all panelists. All right, and I think I'm going to pass it over to Emily here to talk about the notification process.
Great, thanks, Laura. And thanks for the questions in the chat. We're trying to answer those along the way, but we'll also leave space again at the end to reiterate or clarify anything. So moving forward with notifications, if you're awarded, congratulations, that is great. As a reminder, we've said it a couple times now, your organization is only eligible for one creativity grant per fiscal year. So once you're awarded in that, say the FY25 cycle for the creativity grant, you're not eligible to apply again until the next cycle opens in FY26. And similarly, if you've received general operating support, say in FY23 or 24, you would be eligible for FY25 funding coming up. So just keeping in mind one per fiscal year, and that we as the State Arts Council operate on the July 1 to June 30 fiscal year. And we know that a lot of folks might operate on the calendar year. So just making sure when we say fiscal year, we're referring to our fiscal year when it comes to this type of cycle. When you are awarded, you will receive an email notification from our grant platform, Smart Simple, and that will take you to the grant agreement form, which is our grant contract in Smart Simple. So you'll want to sign and return that digitally within that platform. And then also note that payment takes approximately 6 to 8 weeks from the date of that fully executed grant agreement form. So the sooner that you all sign that grant agreement form, our staff then countersigns to fully execute it, and then the invoicing system and the payment process moves forward. So just something to keep in mind as you're planning out your application cycle when you want to apply, to kind of back that up if you're thinking about when you might receive the funding. There are also final reports that are required of our grantees who receive funding. For the creativity grant, because it's open throughout the fiscal year for a majority of the fiscal year, we have two different kind of final report deadlines. So if you are applying at the beginning part of the fiscal year, so between July and December, the final report deadline will be August 15th of 2025. And then applications that are submitted between January and April of 2025 will have a final report deadline of December 31st, 2025. When it comes to the final reports, once you get that, that grant agreement fully executed that I mentioned previously, the final report's going to populate in your Smart Simple account. So you'll have access to that once you get that award and fully executed. So you'll have access to that and the types of questions and what to be thinking about throughout the time period here. So just want to note that you do have access, and it's intended to be a short final report as well. Part of the final report, along with the grant agreement form, is that you as an organization, the grantee, agrees to spend or obligate the funds by the final report deadline. So that means that you are expending, encumbered, or otherwise committing those funds to be used within that specific period of time. And that can be in the form of, having a contract with somebody that will be paid, but it's on your books for the previous fiscal year. Again, with general operating funds, you have a lot of flexibility here of how to use the funds. So we just want to make sure they're being used in the fiscal year in the time period that they were awarded. Additionally, if you're not awarded, that's okay. We ask that you try again. This is not one of those programs where you have to wait a full year to apply again. You can apply again whenever you're ready, and that could be the very next month. You might want to give yourself some space and time to reflect and then prepare another application. And some ways that you can work with us is to ask for feedback from our panelists who reviewed your application. Laura and I prepare feedback forms, and we pull the direct questions and comments and recommendations the panelists have after their review of your application, And we pull that together so they can be some actionable items and things for you all to think about, just to build your application to be more clear the next time around. So then once you apply again, you can hopefully address all those things with the panelists who reviewed it prior. And again, to request this, there would be a link in the decline notification email. So you can just easily click on that, put in your name, the application ID number, and then Laura and I review the requests in order in which they're received. So this does take several weeks at times for processing. Laura and I work through them as we can throughout the year, and sometimes we have pretty busy times, so the timeline gets to be a little bit longer, but then there's also times where we can work through them quickly. So again, for planning purposes, just keep in mind that it does sometimes take several weeks for that processing. I think that's it for the application and kind of that the process in and of itself. But Laura and I get a lot of frequently asked questions throughout the year. So here are a couple of them that we get pretty frequently, and some we've already touched on today, but just to reiterate here. The first one is, can my organization apply for a general operating support and project-based creativity grant in 1 year? By now, you know that that is not something you can do. So as a reminder, you're only eligible for a creativity grant, one per fiscal year, and you pick either general operating or you pick project, but not both. And again, talk to us if you need some support in determining what the best fit might be for your organization and your activities. Another question we hear often is, my organization is eligible and applying to the Professional Development Opportunity Grant, which is another program we offer. Can I also apply for the Creativity Grant in the same month? And yes, you can. You can apply and receive multiple grants in the same fiscal year and even in the same month. So each grant program that we offer, including the Professional Development Grant, has different goals and purposes to support different needs of our artists and organizations. So again, just like we have these creativity grant overviews and guidelines and helpful resources, we have the same thing for the Professional Development Grant, along with all of our other opportunities. So encourage you to review the eligibility criteria and goals and purposes of those grants too. Another question we get a lot is, how can I share work samples, letters of support, reviews, or other materials? And the question is, or the answer is that external documents are not considered part of the review criteria for the creativity grant application. So there's no need to include those things in the application. Panelists are really only reviewing those 3 narrative questions that we went over per the scoring criteria. So you do not need to include any additional or external links or documents, because they will not be considered. So just focus on those answers in those narrative boxes within the application. Another one is, I receive general operating support through the Grants for Organization program, or GFO. Can I apply for project-based support through the Creativity Grant? And the answer here is no. If you receive general operating support through the GFO program, you are not eligible for the Creativity Grant at all, whether that's project-based support or general operating. A few other things here. Again, we like to provide helpful hints to you all. And one of the major things is apply early when you can. So while you are eligible to apply anytime for the Creativity Grant within that application window we've discussed, we do encourage you to apply early whenever possible. It does, as we noted, it can be competitive. We do have ups and downs in terms of how many applications we receive per month. So for example, at the end of our current fiscal year, we saw a huge uptick in applications, making it even more competitive. So don't be discouraged when those things happen, but do plan for time for reapplication if that is something that occurs for your organization. Also, as noted earlier, payment is processed and it takes about 6 to 8 weeks. And part of that is because the payment is processed outside of the State Arts Council offices. So while we make the award and the notification and send invoices, it actually goes through the state system where all state payments are going through. So it does take some time, and it crosses a lot of desks to get into your mailbox or your bank account. So take this into consideration whenever you're determining when to apply, to kind of back up your timeline of when you may get that payment. Additionally, Laura and I are here to help you through the application process. And one of the things we also offer, in addition to feedback from the panelists, is that we're able to provide feedback on your draft application before you even submit. So again, we get a lot of requests for feedback and support. So I allow several weeks if this is something that you would like to do. And it would just be a simple email to Laura and myself, and providing an application draft that we can review either through email. You could upload your draft into Smart Simple, which we'll get into. It can take longer at sometimes, but sometimes we can get to it pretty quickly. But just send us a note if that's something you're interested in, and we can provide that feedback before you hit the submit button in Smart Simple. And speaking of Smart Simple, if you have not already registered your organization or yourself as an independent artist, if that's the case, as a reminder, Smart Simple is our grants platform that we offer. You can get to it by marylandarts.smartsimple.com. We also have links to Smart Simple on nearly every page of our website, so you will have a link somewhere to get to that grants platform. As an applicant, again, if you haven't already registered, you would need to do that. If you are a organization, you would start by clicking the blue register button on the landing page here. If you already have an account, you would just put your email and your password in. When you're registering as an organization, it will take you through a series of kind of just general contact information, your EIN number, those sorts of things, just to confirm that you are an organization. Once you have everything set up and registered, you will have your own kind of login and dashboard, we call it. So when you're going to look for the Creativity Grant application, once you're logged into Smart Simple, you'll see an area that's called My Applications, and then a place that says Opportunities. Opportunities are those open opportunities for grant applications, and it would bring you to a listing of what's available to you. So depending on where we're at in the year, there might be a couple opportunities open, or there might be multiple. So it could be a short list or a fairly long list. But once you get to that listing, you'll see the Creativity Grant in that queue, and you would want to click the blue Apply Now button to get to the actual application. Then you should see a page that looks similar to this on your screen. The first thing you want to do is click the Save Draft button. There's always a blue Save Draft button. It says it in the instructions too, so also advise to read the instructions just to make sure you're super clear. But clicking that Save Draft button will actually open up to make sure you can get to all of the pieces of the application itself. And you always will have a draft saved in your account that you can come back to as well. So that is also a helpful hint that this program this platform does not save your drafts automatically. So just make sure you're aware of that Save Draft button as you're populating your answers or filling things out. Say you want to leave and come back to it, just always hit that Save Draft button. I'm going to go back to this too, because I thought there was another slide. But once you get through all of the program details, the financial information, the attachments that we mentioned, and signing that application, again, hitting Save Draft along the way, then you'll click that blue Submit button. And that makes sure that we know on our end, when we're pulling applications monthly, that we have all of our submissions in one place, and that's how we send them to our panelists for further review. And I think that is it for now. I know we've got about 10 minutes left for questions, and on the screen is both my email and Laura's email for further support. And I know we've been answering some questions in the chat as well, but anything that we need to uplift out of the chat, Laura, or if anybody has questions you'd like to vocalize, please click the raise hand button, and we can address those.
Yeah, I think that we are caught up on the questions in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for those. But Anne, I see you have a question. You're on mute, Anne.
There we go. Sorry. Okay. Yes, as an individual artist, I'm interested in applying for a project, a creativity project grant, and I've applied in the past. And so I'm wondering, is there anything different? The three narrative questions, are they any different? And is there still a big emphasis on the timeline and project parts?
Hey, Anne, good to see you. Nice to see your face. We are going to go over the details of those project-based applications in session tomorrow and Thursday. So we'll go into a lot more detail about those specifics outside of the general operating support. So I'd encourage you to go to attend one of those sessions. And I'm also happy to jump on a call to walk through that as well. But generally, yes, they're going to be very similar to what you've seen in the past, just some more specifics because we've pulled out the project application into two different types, planning and implementation. So yeah, happy to chat offline in more detail about that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. And I see Larry Anderson, you have your hand up.
Good afternoon. Most of our organizations are comprised of artists. And when we talk about artist stipends, is there any problem with, in effect, diverting some of the money from a grant to pay artist stipends to the artists that are part of the organization? Can you, in fact, use that to reduce some of the dues paying or contributions and compensate them for all the time that they put in producing productions?
We love to see artists paid, so absolutely. Yes, and it can absolutely go towards whatever you call it, artist stipends, salaries, whatever the terminology is for your organization. But it can absolutely go towards supporting that. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, Larry, go ahead.
I'll ask another easy one. Is there a word limit on the narrative paragraphs that you include in the application? We
do not have word limits. I just had to think about that for a second because some applications have word limits and some do not. There's not a specific word limit. Some organizations can answer very thoroughly in a succinct, paragraph or two, and some need much more space just depending on the scope of the organization and its programming. So it's really up to you. In terms of how much space you need or don't need to explain that. Great question. And I see a question in the chat from Elena. May have missed this, but will there be another session concentrating on individual artists? Yes, so there will be a session tomorrow and also Thursday that is looking at the project-based support. Tomorrow, we're going to really concentrate on the planning option, and then Thursday is going to be the implementation option. So you can register for either or both of those sessions on our Eventbrite page.
And I'll just add in that those sessions will also be recorded just like today's and will be uploaded to the program page of the website. So you'll have access to that throughout the year, so prior to applying. So just in case you can't make it tomorrow or Thursday, they'll be up there as a resource on our website.
And I'll go ahead and just take the opportunity to plug a few other webinars that will be coming up as well. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Professional Development Opportunity Grant on Monday. I believe it's Monday. And Tuesday, we will be talking about the Presenting and Touring program. So that includes the touring grant and the touring roster as well. So those are other options that are available to both organizations and individual or independent artists. If those are of interest to you, we'd love to have you. It's the same sort of format where we'll walk through all of the eligibility, the applications, questions, etc.
Yeah, and that also reminds me that since we have organization reps in the room, our colleague Ryan Patterson will be going over the Arts Capital program, which is a new program for the State Arts Council. So if that's of interest to listen in to that session, I believe is this Friday at maybe 1 o'clock, but that would be on the Eventbrite page too. Yes, Elena, that's correct. Creativity grants are also tomorrow and Thursday.
All right, any final questions? Oh, Larry had a question. Do touring grants allow out-of-state travel? So touring grants, and we'll go into more specifics next week during that session, but the touring grants are actually to bring artists from our touring roster into your venue or your organization to present them to your audiences. No, it doesn't support out-of-state travel. The Professional Development Opportunity Grant does support out-of-state travel for professional development opportunities, such as going to like a conference or something along those lines. Most of our programs are specific to Maryland-based expenses, but there are a few exceptions, that being one of them. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you learned a lot about the Creativity Grant Program and the General Operating Support application specifically. Like Emily said, we will be posting this recording to the website in the coming weeks, along with all of the other materials. So definitely keep an eye out for that. You can feel free to reference it anytime. And hopefully by now you know that we are here to help however we can. So if you have questions, want to talk through anything, want us to look at drafts, anything like that, please feel free to reach out, email us, call us, text us, however you like, and we are here to help you. Thank you so much again for being here. Emily, anything else to wrap up?
Nope, I think we got it. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all.
All right. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.